Welcome back to the second part. In the previous lesson, we are focusing on defining the key concepts that are probably used in the probabilities. So the basics helped us understand what an experiment is. From there, we also looked at what an event is. Then also understand what a sample space is, and that the event is just the subset from the sample space, which can be treated as a universal set, while the event is treated as a subset. In this lesson, we are going to look at probability calculations, our basics, like how do we find the probability given an event. So this part is very important because that's the basic part of understanding calculations involving probabilities. So we are saying that the probability of an event, that is probability of E for event, for any event, is the chance of an event occurring. So if you are trying to calculate the chance of an event occurring, like for any experiment, for example, we said already that if you toss a die, there are 6 possible outcomes. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if we are focusing on a single event, remember we said a simple event is just a single outcome. What if we are concerning with the outcome, which is number 4? So we can calculate the chance of obtaining 4 after we roll a die. So that's the concept we are doing here. So to find a probability of an event, we use a basic formula. So this formula is basic because whatever level of probability we are going to do, it was generated from this basic part. So here we're saying that the probability of an event can be calculated as the number of favorable outcomes divided by the total number of outcomes in the sample space. So here you're going to see that it's very easy to find a chance for an event once we know the number of our favorable outcome. So the favorable outcome is the event we are trying to find its probability. So that's the favorable outcomes. For example, I gave an example of from rolling a die, we are interested to find the number which is 4. So because we are interested in 4, so the event of getting 4, that's our favorable outcome. The total number of outcomes in the sample space, here we are looking at the total possible outcomes. Outcome also alipo angati mu sample space. Pamene numerator watoyi tikungoyang'ana kuti event tikuifunayo outcome yake ikupezeka kangati kuchokera mu sample space. So remember I said event imakhala subset ya sample space. So sample space ndi yayikulu kuyeza ndi event ndi kakang'ono kamene kamachokera mu sample space. Now in mathematics, the total probability ranges from 0 to 1, meaning to say there is no way that you can find a probability of a certain event which is not within 0 to 1. So 0 means that the event cannot occur. That's the failure. So the chance that an event is going to occur, you are certain that it will occur, is in 1. All right. So it's like say the chance that Malawi is going to win. If you say it's 0, it means it is impossible. That's the failure part. If it's going to win, the success, so it's going to be 1. So that's the certainty part. Now, how do we calculate probability of events? So we need to understand now how we can calculate basics, the probability basics given questions. So now we are going to look at the procedures, then we are going to apply the procedures in handling a few questions. So when we are trying to calculate probability of events, the first thing is you have to list down the sample space of the experiment. Remember, sample space is the collection, it is the set of all possible outcomes. Ndikuti funso mukaliwerenga muona kuti kodi experiment iyo ikambidwayo kodi ma possible outcomes alipo angati. Okay, so that's why it's same. So step number 1 and number 2 goes together. So if it's possible, you list them down. If you can't list them down, you can just note down its total number. Okay, so demonstrations ena simungabanga list ma sample space onse. Okay, muli sanzo alipo 52 simungabanga list. Okay, so what we do is we just note down the total number. Yes, sample space kuti zonse zinalipo zingati. Mukamaliza, you can now determine the event. So the first one is event. Tikamati event, remember the formula but favorable, right? It's like mufuna mubeze probability chiticho. Okay? Outcome again ditiyo imini from base probability. Yeah, okay. So that's the event now. So event muhizi indikira mufunso. Ndikuti mubeze kuti event number lake ya occurrence. Ipo ikupezeka kangati. Okay, event ufuna ija ikupezeka kangati kuchokera mu sample space ya Twitch. So ukatana ndi zimene zozo, you can now apply the formula to answer the question. So with these simple steps, you can answer any question that needs you to apply basic probability principles. Okay, so let's have a look at a question and let's apply and how to solve it. So we're going to look at example number 1. Example number 1. All right, so example number 1 is a coin is tossed. All right, remember what we say in the first place, that in probability basics we say that you have an experiment, and some of the example of experiments like tossing a coin, rolling a dice, okay, shuffling, maybe playing cards. So these are examples of experiments in probability. So this one is our experiment. You are tossing a coin. All right, so the question is, what is the probability of getting heads? What is the chance of getting a head? All right, so for us to understand this question, we need to follow the procedures I said here. So right, so these are the procedures. So remember, step number 1 is for you to list down the sample space of the experiment, right? So during exam yourself, sample space ngati mukumbukira ndi the collection of all possible outcomes in an experiment. Mwachidule, okay, mukapanga toss a coin in the experiment yanu, kodi ma possible outcome akhala chani, mungapezepo chani? Muona kuti mukapanga toss a coin simungapezepo 1, simungapezepo 2, simungapezepo 3, sipakhala manambala. A coin has a head or a tail. So because these are the only possible outcomes, ndoti mupanga list the sample space as a head, and should be a head, and the second one should be a tail. Alright, so because these are the only possible outcomes, that's the correction. It's a set because there's no any other outcome that can be observed apart from these two. So this is step number one. Alright, now the second step here is note down the total number of outcomes in the sample space. Alright, how many outcomes are in the sample space? The total, right? So here you can see that the total number in the sample space, like n of s, should be equal to, so you count the total number here is 1, 2, right? So there are 2 outcomes in the sample space. Remember, we use S for sample space. The total number, more sample space, more outcomes are we, so that's the total. Total is 2. Right? So step number 1 done, step number 2 done. So now, step number 3, determine the event. Okay? Determine the event. So the event is what you are trying to observe, right? What you are trying to find its probability. So in this case, the question says, find the probability of getting heads. Okay? Foka mufuna probability mupeze head mukapanga tose coin. Ndakuti event imene tikuyangana ife apa so the event, okay? The event here is so our event is of getting a head. You see? So event is to get a head. Alright? So that's the first part. Determine the event. So our event is to get a head. Now from there, you need to find the number of occurrence of the favorable event. So now, if you note down your event, mwazodi event yanu ndi head. Ne mubange note down kuti kodi event yanu ifunayo ikupezeka kangati mu sample space. Right? So the number of occurrence of the favorable event. Kumatima kayangana mu sample space. Ne mukapita mu sample space, event tibifunayo head ikupezeka kangati. Mwana kuti head ikupezeka kangati kamosi. Alright? So here you say event head equals 1. Step number 3 done, right? So from there we can apply the formula. Okay? So you can apply the formula to find the probability of getting a head. Okay? So here you are saying, or remember the general formula. So say probability of any event should be equal to number of favorable outcome or event which is mostly represented by letter A because it's their favorable event. Then we divide it by the total number, okay, of outcomes in the sample space. So S, right? So because we are saying S, is the reason is we get the total number from the sample space, right? Remember here we have n of S, 2, all right, and the number of our event is 1. So here the number favorable, that is a number of our event. Let me summarize like this. So number of our favorable event, which is the head, is equal to 1. Remember? So the same thing that is here. You see? So now with this we can just substitute. Now we are going to say that the probability of getting a head is equal to, so the probability of getting ahead, should be equal to, so say number of favorable outcome, which is the head itself. So the number of favorable outcome is 1. Then we'll divide it by the total number of outcome in the sample space. Remember here is 2. So here, that's the answer. You don't need to put in decimals like 0.5. It's up to you, but either way. So that's how we do it. Let's go to example number 2, which we are saying that a die is rolled. Probability is once. Find the probability of rolling a 5. Mabangalo dice yano nde mufuna chance jodi dice yegagwera mbali mene kuli jani mbali mene kuli namba yochedwa 5. Okay, so if you are remembering the procedures as said, this question is very easy. If you remember the procedures, I say that the first thing here to do is you need to get to summarize the list of all possible outcomes. Remember the sample space. That's the first step. So here you're going to say the sample space should be equal to, all right. So if you roll a die, what is, all right, what is the list of all possible outcomes? So if you roll a die, there's a chance of getting a 1, there's a chance of getting a 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. You see, that's what I said. Now from there, I said you have to note down the total number of possible outcomes in the sample space. That's to say, what is the number of elements in the sample space? What is the total number of outcomes there? So if you count here, the total number in the sample space is 6. All right. So step number 3, we say determine the event. All right. So here the event is of getting a 5. So the event is getting a 5. All right. Now from there, you need to summarize the total number of the possible outcome, all right, of the favorite outcome, not possible but favorite. Now 5 mufunayo akupeza ngati kuchokera mu sample space. All right, so that is now to say the number of our event. All right, event tukifunayo kupeza ngati muona kuti event yopeza 5 tikufunaye mu sample space akupeza kamonsi. Can you see now? So there's only 1 5 here. So I'm going to say the number of event is 1. All right. So if you understood the formula, I said the last step is apply the formula, where we say the probability of any event. Now I can use the summary formula. I said it is the number of the favorable outcome or event, which is number of E, divided by the total number of event in the sample space. That's all. So here I will say the probability now of getting a 5. Okay, of getting a 5, just like a shortcut. Should be equal to the total number of event, which is 1, because the only chance you can get 5 there is only 1. All right, then you divide it by the total number of outcomes in the sample space, which is number of S, which is 6. Right. You don't need to leave it in the decimals, just leave it as your answer. So the probability of getting a 5 should be equal to 1/6. The next example is a card is drawn from a deck of 52 cards. I mean, mapanga playing cards. Muna kuti magazi on salibo amaka 54. Komano any probability kwambiri tima solve I think 52. The reason is tima josa majoka. Ndete kacho sabo tima tsandi 52. Okay. So we use 52 as the total number of cards. All right. Then nakuti kadi pa chipaketi chama cards 152. Wina ganatola kadi at random kungotola kadi imodzi. Okay. Ndakuti mupeze probability yoti kadi yatoledwa ija ikozakhala chani, ikozakhala queen. All right. Then step number 1 ndikupanga list down possible chani sample space total zonse zinepo zingati. Then nanena kale kuti pali mafunso ena simungapange list down ma possible space sample space yanu yonse, but what you do is you can summarize it. Tikupanga summary chani total outcomes. All right. So total outcome ndi chimodzi kuti kodi zinthu zonse zinalipo zingati. All right. So same as the sample space. So sample space here to upper sample space AC is same as the total number of cards. So in this case the total number of cards is 52. Can you see now? From there, you said you have to determine your event. Remember? So the event in this situation is event of drawing a queen. Kuli mukatola kadi yanu ija ikarudi ndani, ikarudi ndi queen. Okay? So that is your event. Mwaipesa. Okay? So ngati mukumbukira ndinanena so kuti queen. From there you determine kuti event yanuyo ikupezeka kangati. Okay, muchokera mumatoto kazija. So that is now we say number of the favorable event. Mwanjira ina kuti mwa makadi 52 kuti makwinza alipo angati. So ngati mmasewera izizi ngati mukuziziwa, you can agree with me kuti the total number of queens amakhalapo 4. Okay, amakhalapo 4. Makala flower, makala spade, makala hearts, makala diamond. So zimakhalapo 4 in total. Okay, so makwini onse alipo 4 kumano makazi onse alipo 52. Remember? So remember in this case, from this step you can apply the formula. All right, so the formula is going to be the probability of drawing a queen should be equal to so the total number in the sample space, the total number of the event, the favorable, you divide by the total number in the sample space, which is S. You see? So chance chopeza chopanga draw queen chitachipeza pogawa kuli ma queen wonse ali mwangati mu makadi 52. So there are 4 queens. Then you divide by the total number of cards, that's your sample space. So that should be 52. Okay, so if you simplify this, you are going to see that the probability of getting a queen should be equal to, now mathematically you can simplify that fraction, because 4 can go into 4 and 4 can go into 52. Okay, so 4 into 4 will go 1 and 4 into 52 will go 13 times. So that's your answer. So this is the answer now. So that's the probability. So I have done 3 examples on the basics, and I have given you practice questions, and I'll be doing the same, and I'll be sending some of the questions on the group. Thank you for listening.